Good afternoon. Hey, everybody. It's Laurie-Ann Mirabito here with another day 2 of the training. And today we're going to talk about some stories. And because every time I work with clients and I'm like, we need a story bank. And they're always like deer in the headlight look. I don't have any. And so today you're going to start creating your story bank. So let me just share this. I gotta find it. And wherever you're watching from, hey, just kind of type in and let me know where you are watching from. Let's see. Share there. So I'm really excited. First off, I have to say, anybody, we always hear that advice, start where you are. Start wherever you are with whatever equipment that you have. And I'm going to take a picture of my setup here today because I'm not in my normal home office. I'm down in Florida. So you can see, the kitchen's back there here, just because the light was coming in best this way. And I'm going to take a picture of this setup because it's absolutely hilarious. So, hey, Beth, how are you? Let me know if you can hear me okay. That would be deeply appreciated. So like I said, I'm down here in Florida, and we are going to talk about stories. Today's day 2. In day 3, I'm just going to give you a little teaser about tomorrow. Day 3, she doesn't know yet, but there's going to be a guest on here. I still have to send her a text message and tell her to look nice from the waist up. A friend of mine is coming down here. She's a fellow speaker, and I think we're just going to have a little bit of Q&A, kind of talk about our journeys as being speakers and coaches and answer whatever questions you guys have. Will be an open book. And that will be tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you're not able to make the program tomorrow, please feel free just to post your questions and we will be sure to answer them. So in the wonderful world of speaking, we always talk about stories. And a friend of mine, Tom Asacker, he wrote the book. One of his very first books is called Sandbox Wisdom. And it's wonderful if you have the opportunity to pick it up. And it's a short book told in a parable format. And in there, one of the chapters is stories sell. And I've always remembered that. And one very particular moment that I remember in regards to selling, I was in the Bath and Beauty store that's in the mall, all those different fragrance lotions and soaps and etc. And I was looking at, those gloves that you put the cream on and then you put these gloves on and you wear them either overnight or, for 20 minutes, also for your feet. And, they're kind of pricey and, I don't know about you, but, I've bought a number of things that have these amazing claims and no, they just don't work. And then I ended up being disappointed. So this young lady says to me, because I'm looking at them and she says, I have a really good friend who came in and bought them. She has super, super dry hands. She has tried every cream in the book. She bought those. She used that. Her hands are like silk now. What do you think I did? I was like, sold. Sold. I don't even know who her friend is. But what I do remember is thinking, stories sell. That story sold me. And so that lesson applies to your business and also when you're presenting. And when I say presenting, presenting is not just on stage. It's when you're at a networking group and you're talking one-on-one with somebody. It's when you're on a sales call or you're doing a sales presentation, or just giving your elevator pitch. Is your elevator pitch something that people can visualize and it draws them into you to ask you more questions. You know, my 3C's presentation is a presentation needs to be compelling, captivating, and most importantly, converting. So we're going to talk about stories because most of you, if you have children, and even if you don't have children, maybe you're an aunt or an uncle, and you got the little kids. If you've ever tucked a little kid in for their nap or to go for bedtime, little kids say, tell me a bedtime story. They don't say, tell me a bedtime statistic. And I see new speakers, whether they're entrepreneurs that are using, speaking to get visible and, gain clients, get their word out there, sell from the stage, and they don't tell enough stories. Stories are entertaining. Think about why you sit down at night, in the living room with maybe a glass of wine or a bowl of popcorn, and you're about to turn on Netflix or some other TV show that you really enjoy. How many times have you watched the same movie again and again and again? Let me know in the comments below. What movie have you watched more than once? I know that I'll tell you which movies I've watched over and over again. Let's see. One of them is Legally Blonde. I love the first one. And I think the second one is phenomenal also. Let's see. Pretty Woman is another one that I've watched over and over and over again. Gone with the Wind is actually my favorite movie. And I have a great story that goes with Gone with the Wind. My family, when I was a young teenager, I lived in Japan. And in Japan, the Gone with the Wind would play in the theaters about every 6 months. And I have this very fond memory. My father actually, it was arranged. He was taking me out of school. He took me out of school. I met him at the train station, and we took the train into Boston. Excuse me, Boston. I'm here in the U.S. now. He took me into the center of Tokyo, and we went to a theater, and this was probably the first time my father has ever sat through this movie, but he did it for me. And I tell you, and we sat down in the theater, and I remember him handing me a small bag of M&Ms, and he sat through the entire movie. And that's a 3-hour movie, by the way. He sat through the entire movie with me. And that's a memory that I've cherished and I've held on forever. It's also the only time being in the theater that I ever cried at this movie. So that's a fond memory. Again, stories. So that movie is something that I love, but even more so that my father took me to see that movie. So I'm just going to read some of your answers. Beth says one of her movies that she's seen over and over again is Dirty Dancing, The Great Gatsby, The Outsiders. Talene says The Breakfast Club and Ever After. Oh, I love The Breakfast Club. Yeah. I would also, what's the 16th? Sweet 16 or Pretty in Pink? I think it was Pretty in Pink. Let's see. Love that movie and the book. I think, Talene, you're talking about Gone with the Wind. I have never read the book. Sad. So we love stories. Stories say what you don't need to say. Stories paint a picture for the listener. That's the importance of stories. And that's why we tell stories. I'm just looking at Jen's answer that you didn't know what the question was, okay? But yours is Overboard. I don't think I've ever seen that one. So anyways, back to stories. While I'm just chit-chatting about the stories, make sure take a minute to grab pen and paper because you are going to start your story bank now. But while you're gathering your school supplies, how appropriate for September being National Self-Development Month, the kids are going back to school, is that we're going to work on this. Okay, you guys are going crazy with movies. Okay, Overboard, 16 Candles, Pretty in Pink, Oh my God. So I really got to watch that. Jen, I will definitely, I'm going to put that on my list. I will watch that. I got Netflix. I hope it's on Netflix. Um, and my kids all the time. Lauren, I don't think I've ever seen that one either. And I will have to, I'm going to have to add these to my list because if these are movies that you guys watch over and over again, they have to be good. And so here's the thing about you watch the movies over and over again and you know the ending. Isn't that funny that you're watching it over and over again and you know exactly how it's going to turn out? But why? Because it's entertaining. And there's also something where one of as human beings, there are 6 human needs, and I probably should do a Facebook Live training about the 6 human needs. And one of them is predictability. And the opposite of predictability is spontaneity. So to be able to watch a movie that you've never watched before, because that can be exciting, but also to watch a movie that you have watched before because it's predictable. You know what the ending is going to be. And you know that you liked it. And you know that you know where all those tear-jerking moments are. And you still watch it anyways because you like the emotions that it produces. The same thing when you are telling stories. Now, one of the things that I want to share with you is to tell a really good story. If you've got a good story, and it's to craft it into an outstanding story that people will remember over and over and over again. There is a story that I tell, and it's actually about my dad again, and it's about when I was younger. I think I was about 11 years old, and how I recruited me and my sisters to get this jackknife for my dad. And I tell it in a way that the audience doesn't know that I'm talking about me, and that's kind of like, I'm going to call it the punchline, but it's the tear-jerking moment. It's when people go, oh, when I mention that my dad still has this. Well, this story is so impactful, and I can walk down the street, and I've had this happen to me several times before, where people have said, "You're Laurie-Ann. You tell that jackknife story, right?" And that's how people remember. That's one of the ways that people remember me. But your stories can be that memorable that people tie you to your story. And that's about crafting a really good story, not he said this and then she said that, and then we went into the grocery store. It's not like that. Telling a good story is a craft, is an art, just like all of our presentations. But so I want you to, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, and I want you to think of different stories. But here's the thing about stories when in the business world, and especially being on stage, presenting, or on a podcast, etc. When you tell your story, and then you tell the business lesson, or the lesson that you want the audience or the listener to take away from that. So another time I will share with you the jackknife story, and you'll see the lessons, and the lessons aren't always constant. And what I mean by that is, depending on the audience that I'm speaking in front of, I can customize those lessons for that audience. So if I'm speaking to a youth group, I'm like a younger teens or 20s, I'm going to customize those lessons for them to take away. If I'm in the business world, like talking to a group of bankers, I'm going to customize those lessons for them to walk away so that they feel like, I get it. That lesson was meant for me. When you're talking in front of a customer, and you want your customer to feel like they can see themselves in the story and they see themselves in the lesson. A great example of this is if you've read or mostly listened to the woman who writes the book How to Be a Badass Making Money. Jen, I don't want to butcher her last name, but if somebody can type in her name, that would be awesome. But How to Be a Badass at Making Money. There is a story in there about 2 goats and a horse. It is absolutely hilarious, but it's the way she tells the story. And then, thank you, Alyssa, and then the way she tells the story, and then she tells you the lessons about the goats being very determined and about the lessons of, the lessons like through the eyes of the horse. It's hilarious, and that's what I want you to take away. You tell a story, you tell the lesson that you want the audience to walk away with. Okay, so enough about that. Let's grab some paper and pen, and because I am going to help you start your storybook bank. And I want you to think in terms of, put this at the top of the page, the words first, last, best, and worst. One more time. First, best, worst, and last. I'm going to type that in right here too. Let's see. First, best, worst, and last. So each of these that I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give you just a word. Think about what was the first. So for example, the first one's going to be vacation. And tell me about a first vacation, the best vacation, the worst vacation, and even your last vacation. So that's how I want you to think about these. A story through a vacation. And don't worry about the lessons. Whatever comes to mind, just kind of jot down a few notes about a vacation. First, best, worst, and last. About a client. Could be a current client. Could be your first client. Your best client. Your worst client. Your last client. Your first day in business, or maybe just an ordinary day in business, your best day in business. Maybe like when you got out of high school or college, you got a job. What was your first job? What was that job? Are there any stories regarding that job? I come from healthcare, and I have great stories about my first job, how much I loved it. And that's what started me on the journey on this journey with leadership, because I coincidentally changed departments and then had the worst boss. Maybe going to the gym, the first time you ever went to the gym, the last time you went to the gym. Maybe for some of us, the last time we went to the gym was, just a couple of days ago. Some of us, it might be a couple of months. What was that like? A car, your first car, your last car, your worst car, your best car, your dream car. How about an award that you've been awarded, that you won? One of my stories that I tell is when I was 9 years old. And when I was 9 years old, I have a nickname that's Smiley, go figure. And now as an adult, I tell people, like, have I ever told you the story behind this smile? And it's when I was 9 years old, I won a smiling contest. And the prize was candy. I think they didn't want me to win 2 years in a row. Either that or it was sponsored by a dentist. But, what do you think that did? I mean, so here are some of the lessons. What do you think that did to my self-confidence, for the rest of my life? Knowing that I had a smile that somebody thought was worthy of an award. Okay, it was candy, but, still the same. A time when you went out to dinner. Best time you went out to dinner. It was like the worst time you went out to dinner, the last time. So maybe a story about your dad, your mom, grandparents, siblings. We've all got stories, you've got lots of stories regarding family. There's also a lot of humor in those stories. A marriage, maybe it was your first marriage, your last marriage, your current marriage. This is my second marriage. My first husband, passed away. So there are lots of stories, going through his illness and going through grief, even dating again. as a widow. Children, your children, I'm sure you have a wealth of stories to tell about your children. But let's find the story, let's find the lessons in them as well. Maybe it was like their first steps. As a parent, maybe it's just something that, like your children said or noticed or observed. And especially if you're into personal development, your kids are probably picking up your habits as well. Let's see, an apartment, your first apartment. What was that like? What are the stories about how you got that apartment? I have vivid memories about my first apartment and how I wanted, a certain apartment, and I kind of didn't manifest that. A car. I mentioned cars also. I also manifested one of my cars too that I still have today. Why you chose this path? There's a great story behind that. Like what led up to this, the lessons that you've learned easily and also the hard way. Think of some of the lessons that you've learned easy, the last lesson that you learned, the worst lesson that you learned, etc. If you've ever spoken before, done a presentation, how many, what was the best presentation? What was the worst presentation? The last presentation that you gave, one of my stories, and I don't think I've ever really disclosed this, but there was, I was asked to give a presentation completely spontaneous. And I was asked to get up. It was actually with a direct sales company that I was involved with, and they were just like, get up there, you give them. I started laughing and couldn't stop laughing because I was just, and I tried to excuse myself saying, oh, I'm sorry, I just kind of heard this really funny joke and I can't seem to get it out of my mind, and I could not stop laughing. Then I finally looked at somebody and said, yeah, you're going to have to do this. So that is probably my worst presentation. How about a sale, like your first sale? Whether a first sale, your last sale, your best sale, your worst sale. How about a case study in regards to like your clients, your customers, or just in your industry? A best friend, the first storm that you ever made it through on your own. Let's travel outside of the country. Maybe you've lived outside the country like my family did in Japan. Family customs. There's certain things that you do on the holidays or just on the weekend dinners, or even your country's customs. Maybe some language barrier moments where you meant one thing and the other person took you the other way. If you'd like, I have a great story about a language barrier in English, just different parts of the country. There are certain words that mean something here on the East Coast and on the West Coast. They are completely different. If you want to know that, feel free to drop me a line. I will tell you that one. It's rather hilarious. Jen says, or going through customs. Yes, I like that. Going through, Lord knows, with TSA, there are lots of great stories. And I bet you a TSA agent would make the stories they could tell about the things that people try to bring through, I'm sure would boggle our minds. I always thank them too when I go through. Maybe an incident when you spoke up. Maybe an incident when you didn't speak up. Car accident. Bad news, receiving bad news, receiving really good news. How about a promotion that you once got? A test or an exam that you passed. Another one that I didn't write down that I want to share with you. How about just stories about aging? So here's one that I will share with you that I use with it's, going to the eye doctor, and yeah, it's getting a little difficult for me to read. But they'll, like the eye doctor will ask you, so are you, how are you reading? Do you need any help with readers? Do you need any cheaters? And I was like, why? No. I said, all you got to do is increase the font on your iPad or your phone. And that turned into a story that I've used in leadership. about how increasing the font is a way that we get to kind of ignore the problem. And that's what I see in leadership. You know, they are just increasing the font. Ignore the problem that's right there in front of you. So that's how I want you to think of like your stories. I will make sure that I put this list, so you don't have to, if you've been jotting down some quick notes, I'm going to put this list of ideas that will just spark in a post so that you can go back and redo it and make, add to your story list. Or feel free to listen to this again. Listen to it a couple of times as you start to keep adding to your story bank. And don't worry about the stories, we can polish them up later, but you just want to get the ideas down so that this is the beginning step to crafting these amazing stories. And then it's easy to customize the lessons depending on who you're speaking to. And I'm just going to check over here to see let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to share this as well. This is day 2 of the 3-day training. Totally want to be able to share this story bank idea with as many people as possible. And I'll be picking some people. If you share this, I'm going to be picking a couple of people who are going to win a coaching session with me. Because why not? Hi, Erica. You just save this video to watch later. Let's see. If you guys have any questions, feel free to type them in. Otherwise, I'm going to bring this to a close because one of my goals was just to keep this short, sweet, and to the point, which is, kind of like how I am. I'm just kind of direct and let's get things done. So again, keep adding to your stories. I'll make this list and I'll put it in a post at the bottom here, so that you'll have it and you'll be able to refer to it instead of watching the video. But please feel free to share. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. We're going to have a special guest. I still have to tell her she's going to be a special guest on this show, but it's going to be 2 speakers. We'll answer all of your questions, and we'll just kind of tell you some funny stories about being in the speaking industry and how we both kind of got into this. And I will look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have a great afternoon.